You know, when we think of ancient Israel's worship, we usually picture the big, famous feasts. But tucked right between two of the giants is this celebration, one of the most meaningful, yet honestly one of the most overlooked, in the entire Hebrew calendar. It's called the Feast of Firstfruits, and it's this incredible feast of hope, a promise of what's to come, hidden right there in plain sight. So let's dig in and uncover its meaning.
And right away, we hit this fascinating paradox. I mean, how can you celebrate a harvest that hasn't even happened yet? This feast, then, is this profound act of faith. It's a celebration of what is promised, based on just the very first signs of life. It's all about celebrating the future before it fully arrives.
All right, so to really get our heads around the power of this idea, we have to go back to the beginning. What did this whole harvest before the harvest thing really mean to the people who first celebrated it?
So, the command from God, which you can find in Leviticus, was super specific. Right after Passover, on the day after the Sabbath, they were supposed to bring the first sheaf of the barley harvest to the priest. Not the biggest sheaf, not the best one, just the absolute first one to ripen. See, it was never about the quantity of the grain, but about the priority of the giver.
And this feast really taps into a core principle that ran through all of ancient Israelite life: the first of everything. It belonged to God. This was a powerful act of trust, a way of them declaring, look, everything we have comes from you, and because we're giving you the first part, we trust that the rest is on its way.
Okay, so that's the what, but what about the how? How did this promise actually play out in practice? Let's walk through the specific ritual that brought this powerful act of faith to life.
The process itself was pretty simple, but man, it was deeply symbolic. They'd cut a small bundle of the very first stalks to ripen. It was called an Omer. It wasn't eaten or stored, it was set apart. Then the priest would take this sheaf and lift it up, waving it before the Lord. This gesture was like a powerful declaration. This entire harvest belongs to you before we even eat a single grain. And only after that act of dedication was the rest of the harvest unlocked. I mean, think about what this meant. God gave this remarkable command. No one, and I mean no one, was allowed to eat from the new harvest. No reaping, no feasting, not even grinding flour, until this first fruits offering was made. The blessing of the entire future harvest was unlocked by honoring the source first. It's all about priority.
And you know, unlike the seriousness of some other feasts, Firstfruits was a feast of pure joy. There wasn't any mourning or fasting. This was a full-on celebration that marked the moment when the death-like grip of winter finally gave way to the life-springing harvest. It was a festival of new beginnings, new creation, and new hope.
Now, with deep respect for the Jewish tradition and its original meaning, we're going to shift gears a little bit and look at the Christian interpretation, because Christians believe this feast wasn't just some historical ritual, but that it was a divine rehearsal, a prophetic appointment pointing to something much, much greater.
According to the Gospels, the timing is, well, it's just incredibly precise. Jesus is crucified on Passover, he's buried during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and then he rises from the dead on the day after the Sabbath during that festival week. And that specific day, according to the calendar in Leviticus, is the Feast of Firstfruits. For Christians, that is no coincidence. It's a fulfillment.
And this connection isn't something people just figured out later. It's made explicit right here in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul directly takes this agricultural term and applies it to Jesus. He calls him the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep, which is a beautiful poetic way of talking about the dead. But what does it actually mean to call a person the first fruits?
Well, think of it this way. Just as that first sheaf of barley was the beginning of the physical harvest, Jesus is seen as the beginning of a spiritual harvest of resurrection. Now, his resurrection is totally different from someone like Lazarus, who was raised only to die again later. Nope, Jesus rose to a glorified eternal life, never to return to the grave. He is the first of a new kind of humanity, a whole new creation.
So this fulfillment then becomes this profound promise for the future. I mean, if Jesus is the first fruits, what does that say about the rest of the harvest? Let's explore the guarantee that this represents.
And this is where the metaphor just clicks into place perfectly when you put them side by side. The first sheaf wasn't just the start of the harvest, it was a pledge that more was coming. In the exact same way, Jesus' resurrection isn't just the start of resurrection, it's the guarantee that more will follow. And just as that sheaf was lifted up before God, Jesus ascended to God, representing the promise of the full harvest yet to come.
The Apostle Paul actually uses the same logic again in the book of Romans. It's this ancient principle. What happens to the first part determines the quality and the destiny of the whole thing.
If the first sheaf is good and accepted, the rest of the harvest is good and accepted. So if the first fruits, Jesus, is holy and raised to eternal life, then the whole batch, that's all who are connected to him, is sanctified and guaranteed that very same destiny.
So when you put it all together, what you see is the core of the Christian gospel laid out perfectly in these three spring feasts. Passover shows us the price of redemption. The lamb died. Unleavened bread shows us the purity of the Redeemer. The bread was buried. And firstfruits reveals the ultimate victory. The firstfruits rose.
And so the question this ancient feast leaves us with is this: if one single sheaf of barley could guarantee an entire field of grain, what does one resurrection guarantee for all of humanity?